This video will walk you through topic 8, where you are solving equations and inequalities from text sections number 3.3 and 3.4. We're going to begin with solving one-step equations. So for one-step equations, you're going to be able to get the variable all by itself using a single step. You may have to either add or subtract the same number to both sides of an equation, or multiply or divide both sides by the same thing. And just remember that either way, when you do the same thing to both sides of an equation, you're actually keeping the value of the equation the same. Because, for example, on this first problem, this equation is simply stating that this x plus 3 quantity is equal to this quantity. So if we make the same changes to both sides of the equation, for example, if we subtract 3 from both sides of the equation, then we end up not changing whether the two quantities are still equal. So both sides are now less by 3, but both sides are still equal to each other. And you can also get in the habit of checking to see that your solution does make the original equation true by, after you box your answer, simply rewrite the original equation, but in place of where the variable was, you can put your answer and just make sure that it makes it true. So let's try that again on this one. For this one, we're taking x and subtracting 5.12. So I'm going to use adding 5.12 to undo that. Now, on the left-hand side, x minus 5.12 plus 5.12 leaves me with x plus 0, which is just x. And on the right-hand side, that negative 8.43 plus 5.12 leads to negative 3.31. And again, we can box our answer and check. And when we check, we replace x with the answer that we got, which is negative 3.31. And if we check, we find that both sides equal negative 8.43. Now, with 2x, one thing to clarify here is that that actually represents 2 times x. So if we want to get rid of the 2, we are going to need to divide both sides by 2. That's going to cause my 2's, 2 divided by 2, to cancel down to 1. So this becomes 1x equals 5 over 2. But 1 times x is still just x. And you can also check this one by replacing x with parentheses and then plugging in your answer. And you'll see that by fraction multiplication, these cancel, and therefore these two are equal. And this example right here, it's useful to think of this fraction bar right here as a division symbol. So this you can think of as being like x divided by 5. So to undo that, you're going to multiply both sides of the equation by 5. On the left-hand side, the two 5's, 5 divided by 5, becomes 1x, which is just x. And then negative 4 times 5 is negative 20. And again, you can box your answer and check. You can also write this a couple of different ways. So you'll see that for this final answer, I'm keeping it with the fraction bar and the division symbol is not listed here, but it is possible to rewrite this as division. Now, we're going to continue by looking at two-step conditional equations. We don't talk in great detail about the definition of conditional equations in this class, but it basically just means that they are true for certain values of x. They're not necessarily true for all values of x or no values of x. So there is a solution, but it's not all of the solutions. You can see more about that in your book if you'd like to learn more, but we're going to focus on the step-by-step process. So here, do you notice that we have a variable part on each of these, where the x is. So we have this, we have this, we have this, which I'm going to include the negative as part of, and we have this. So all of those are what I would call my variable term. My goal when I am solving an equation is to get that variable part all by itself and eventually just have an x. But if I can just get the 2x by itself in part A, then I'll be able to finish in a single step. So to get the 2x by itself, I need to get rid of the plus 3. So we subtract 3 from both sides to get rid of the plus 3. And now I have 2x plus 0, which is just 2x, and negative 11 minus 3, which is negative 14. Now, just like in the first part where we had one-step equations, I notice that this is 2 times x, so I divide both sides by 2, which leads me to 1x equals negative 7. And you can box your answer. I'm going to check this first one, but I'm not going to show the check for every single one, but I will show it on this one. And when I simplify the left-hand side of this, it becomes negative 14 plus 3 is equal to negative 11, which is true. So that checks out. Let's take a look at part B. I have already highlighted my variable term. So what I want to do is get that highlighted portion by itself. And I'm going to use addition and subtraction to accomplish that for all of these problems. So to get rid of the minus 5, I'm going to add 5 to both sides, which leads me to 1/4 x is equal to negative 3. Now, just like in the previous problem where I had x over 5 in part D above, which you can see right here, this is very similar actually to that problem, because even though it's written a little bit differently, it is still representing x divided by 4. Now, sometimes people think of this as 1/4 times x. Sometimes people think of it as x divided by 4. You can really think of it either way. Either way, if you multiply both sides by 4, then you get that 4 to cancel out to a 1. So instead of 1/4, now we have 1x. And that's our final answer. And if we go on to part C, our goal is still to get the variable term by itself. And I like to think of that negative as being part of the 2x. The minus 2x I think of, and if it helps you, you can write it as plus negative 2x. Notice that that minus really goes with the 2x term. So if we want to get rid of the 5 itself is a positive number, so I'm going to subtract it to get rid of it, which leads me to negative 2x equals 7. And in this case, we'll get the rest of the way there by dividing by the negative 2. That'll get rid of the negative sign and the 2. And it's actually just fine to leave it as a fraction. If you want to take it to negative 3.5, that is also fine. And for part D, we're going to subtract 8 from both sides to try to get the variable term by itself. And now that the variable term is by itself, we're back in that same situation where you can think of this as x divided by 5 or x times 1/5. Either way, we're going to get rid of that 5 by multiplying both sides by 5, leading me to cancellation here, which gives me negative 60. Now the next problems on the next page include all of this work. So at this point, I highly recommend that you pause the video and you go to Connect Math and look for problems that look like these one-step and two-step conditional equations, and just practice them until they're really, really easy for you. And once those are really easy for you, then you'll be able to keep up a little bit more easily as we sort of go into more complicated problems on the next page.